Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Recently, I have been receiving some amazing gifts from my subscribers, the most recent of which is this little slice of awesomeness, Origon The Denouncer. This miniature was donated to the channel by subscriber Mortis Logan. You may have seen him in the comments of some of my videos where he appears under the name Endungeoned. Endungeoned is the name of his own YouTube channel. It's also known as Mort's Miniatures Vlog, and I've been a subscriber to that channel for a little while now, and it's really good fun. If you like miniatures, if you like painted miniatures, old hammer stuff, weird miniatures that you may not have otherwise seen, terrain, it's well worth checking out. But anyway, Mort saw my videos on the Dungeons and Lasers terrain from Archon Studio, and he contacted me to say that he had one of the dragons from the Dungeons and Lasers terrain that he would like to send to me. And here it is. This is Origon The Denouncer, and it is from the Dungeons and Lasers 2 set. And this is basically an Oriental dragon, really. And if we look at the front of the box here, we can see that apparently it is tabletop ready. I have no idea what Archon Studio mean by this because this miniature is neither painted nor assembled. It is as far from tabletop ready as any miniature can possibly be. It is, however, made in durable plastic, and you are indeed getting one miniature. It doesn't say a scale on the box that I can see. Archon Studio tend to do things in 32mm scale, but really these days scales are all over the place, and most 28mm and 32mm stuff is perfectly compatible. I don't really worry about it all that much. It does say, however, it is 127mm tall and it comes on a 50mm base. I'm excited to get this opened and assembled, so I guess we should do that. And here we have our tabletop ready miniature. Honestly, I really don't know what they mean by that, but you can see we have 2 frames and this thing requires some assembly. On the first frame here we have part of the head, we have the base, which has, I don't know if that's going to come out on the camera very well, it's a sort of oriental themed roof of some kind. And then we have the wings, some of the body, bit of the leg by the looks of it. And then on the other frame we have claws, talons, the tail, the other part of the head, the rest of the body. All seems pretty straightforward. This is not push fit, it has keyed components. You can see there are recesses in some of the components, and then there are nubs on the other components, so that will help you to line up the elements and marry them together. But this is going to require some glue to go together, I can see that. And then we have our manual, Origon The Denouncer. He looks absolutely awesome there. And we basically have some build instructions. It looks pretty straightforward. You can see we have numbered components. They've used like a color key, so the light blue part is the part you are attaching to the previously assembled dark grey parts. And then there are pictures of what it should look like when those components are together. That's pretty neat. That seems very straightforward, easy to follow. They've zoomed in where they need to zoom in. I still think when it comes down to instruction manuals for building stuff, Games Workshop are the company to beat. I think their instructions are incredibly clear, but this looks decent as well. Very nice. And it goes over onto the back. And it says alternative assembly here, and then it has wings. Does that mean you can build it with or without the wings? I guess it does. Traditional Oriental dragon probably wouldn't have the wings, and the wings are an option by the looks of it. Very nice. That all seems pretty straightforward, easy to follow. I don't think I'm going to have any problems putting this together. I've quickly dashed over to my paint station where I do all of my miniatures assembly as well as my painting, and I've just started clipping some of these components out of the sprue. I'm using my trusty side cutters. One thing I have noticed, some of the connections on the frames for this miniature are not well positioned. When you are snipping components out of the frame, you may find that you have to angle your cutters between 2 spines on the dragon's back to get into the plastic connector, and that's not ideal. Generally you want those connectors to be on areas that are easy to get at so you can cut them without damaging the miniature. You will see I also have a craft knife on my desk. That is so that I can trim up any mould lines. There are a few mould lines on this. They're not too bad, but there are a few that are quite obvious, so those will need to be trimmed off, as well as any nubs from removing components from the frame. And while we are talking about the frame, there is one thing I wanted to point out. All of the components are numbered, and the numbers appear on the frames, on the parts of the frames that you will cut away from the miniature itself. But you can see that each number also has a corresponding arrow. So here we have the number 19, and you might not be sure if that or that is number 19. They have put a little arrow pointing in the right direction. That's a neat little touch just to make sure you are not going to get confused when you are cutting out components to put this thing together. And here we have the first two parts that you are supposed to cut out and connect. As I mentioned in my introduction, you do have nubs. They are keyed, so we have the recesses here and the nubs here. So these two parts, they will sit together, but they will not clip and hold in place. You are going to need to glue those. And they fit pretty well by the looks of it. That's not too bad. That tail just there is a little gap, but I think when I'm gluing it, if I just make sure I push firmly there, it will fill most of the gap. Things are going pretty well. As you can see, I have some of these sub-assemblies put together at this stage, and I just wanted to very quickly show you a bit more about how this miniature is keyed to fit together. If we look at this piece here, we can see there is a recess here, and that is where the arm will go. I already have the arm here, and there is a shape on the end of that arm that will fit nicely into there, and when it is in position correctly, that's a pretty good fit. There is a small amount of a visible line there, but nothing too much. And I think once you've got a primer on there, because it is along the line of the scales of the dragon, that's not going to show up very much. Of course, any areas where there is a bit of a visible line, you can use some green stuff or some liquid green stuff to fill that in. And here we have Origon completely assembled, and I have to say, this is probably one of my favourite dragon miniatures in my collection at this point. I think it is lovely. Look at the shape of that. Look at that wonderful curved shape. Really nice detailing. Really nice the way that the whole piece is assembled. It went together very easily. There was no particular problems with anything. There was nothing of note, I don't think, in terms of particular ways that you needed to be careful. It was pretty straightforward. And as you can see, the wings were indeed optional, and I chose to leave them off because Chinese dragons don't normally have wings. But let me just show you how the wings work, because all of the other components are keyed, as I showed you before, so there are little recesses and then little nubs that fit into those recesses. That is not the case with the wings, because obviously they needed to make it so that if you don't attach the wings, it doesn't show. But even though the wings aren't keyed, if you look at the end of the wing where it connects to the body, it is shaped, and it is shaped in such a way that it will fit over a specific part of the scales of the main body. And where you have to attach it is just here. There is a line where the neck connects to the body, and you need to basically have the top part of that wing line up with where that line is here. So you just put it like that, and you'll see that it sort of sits directly over the miniature, and you can barely see a connecting point there at all. And it's the same on the reverse side. There is one specific point just on this curve here where the wing will fit exactly. So you just need to make sure that you find out exactly where that is, and it is just there, like so. But as I said, I'm not going to attach the wings. I think it looks really good without. The wings come out quite far, and it does make it look quite wide and top heavy, I think, having the wings on it. Whereas as it is, I really like this shape, the serpentine shape of the curves. I think it's a beautifully balanced miniature in terms of the way that it is posed. But, of course, a miniature like this needs some paint on it, so that's what I'm going to do now. As this is a sort of Chinese dragon, I thought it would be fun to try and paint it in the style of a Chinese watercolour, which means I'm pretty much just going to use washes on this miniature, and we'll see how it turns out. But I've started by spray coating it with necrotic flesh from Army Painter. And when that's completely dry, I'm going to get some Army Painter matte white, and I'm going to do a very heavy dry brush over the whole miniature. It's almost an overbrush really, because I want a lot of white going over this green. Most of the green is only going to stay in the recesses and in any really shadowy areas. And I'm using a big brush for this because it's a big miniature. There are a few tight places on this miniature. You can switch to a smaller dry brush for those. And then when that's done, it's time to switch to our washes, and I'm starting with a Chthonian camo shade, and this is going to go over all of the scales. So basically the main body of the dragon, the arms and the legs. And we're just going to do one coat. We're going to apply it quite liberally, but we're going to make sure it doesn't pool in any of the recesses too much. We really just wanted to pick out all of the details of the scales. Next I'm switching to Reichland Flesh shade, and we're going to apply this to the horns, the spines running along the back, the talons and the fangs, basically any bony spiky bits on the miniature. And then we are switching to Army Painter Blue Tone, and we're going to apply this to all of the tendrils that are coming off of the tail and also off of the cheeks of the face, and there's some on the arms and legs as well. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to create a sort of mystical flame, a stylized mystical flame. So the blue is going to be focused around the central areas of those tendrils, blending into the green of the body. As I said, I'm trying to make this look a little bit like a painting, so it's a little bit more stylized than something I might normally do. Next I'm switching to the red tone, and we're going to do the same thing again, but obviously moving away from that blue area. So the red tone is going to move out towards the ends of the tendrils on the tail and the cheeks, and also those tendrils on the legs and arms. It's going to overlap a little bit with the blue, so we get a nice sense of the blending gradation of the colours. But really we're trying to give the sense of fire rather than an accurate representation. Next I'm using matte white again on the eye, and the reason I'm doing this is because next up I'm going to Cassandora Yellow, and the Cassandora Yellow is going to go over all the ends of the tendrils, completing our mystical fire look. It's also going to go over the eyes to give the eyes a nice yellow glow. So I wanted to make sure I had that matte white down as a base coat for that first. But as you can see, the Cassandora Yellow is really bright, it looks really vibrant, and I really like this look. And again, we want to make sure we are blending it slightly into the red we've applied previously, so we get a nice transition. Next up I have some Army Painter Green Tone, and the plan here is to apply it under the curved areas of the body and in areas where there would be natural shadows like under the arms and under the legs. And this is just to add some extra definition to the scales and to give more of a sense of 3 dimensions. We're going to emphasize the shadows, the shadowy areas. So we're not applying this all over the green areas, just in those specific areas, just to give the whole thing more depth. Then I'm switching to Seraphim Sepia, and this is going to be applied to the bases of the horns, the claws, the fangs, and all the way down the ridges of the spines on the back. Then I'm going back to my red tone, and I'm going to apply some of this directly from the bottle onto the base, and then I'm going to spread it out with my brush, just so we can get a nice coat of red all over this scenic base element. And then when that's all dry, I'm just going to line in the edge of the base with Abaddon Black. And the very final thing that I will need to do is also with Abaddon Black, I will need to thin it down slightly, take a deep breath, and dot in the pupils on the eyes. And then when I have done that, I'm all finished. And here we have the miniature completely finished. And I'm pretty happy with how that's turned out actually. I really like the tail. And while I don't think I've necessarily really accurately captured the sense of a Chinese watercolour, an attempt was made. So I'm happy with that. I think that's going to look good on the table. I think that's going to look good when it is eating all of my heroes in a future Dungeons & Dragons adventure. And that's about it for this video, other than to say once again thank you to Mortis Logan for sending in this miniature. It's an incredibly generous gesture, and once again for those people who didn't catch it at the start of the video, Mort's Miniatures vlog. I will put a link in the video description below. It is well worth going to check out. But that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.